course, Bob Bring, if he's just got back from vacation, he may or may not be coming on. Do you want to wait a couple more
Yeah, I'll
minutes?
wait a few minutes. I'll just wait like 5 more minutes before I leave.
Okay, we'll just get started.
Okay.
Just wanted to welcome everybody back. I know it's been a busy summer. I know for myself, you've been out of town a couple times and a lot going on in Olean with the Gus Macker and all the other things. So hopefully everybody's having a great summer. To get started, I talked to Mary Elliott before he left, and there's really nothing new on the human resource position just yet. So I don't have anything to give you. And I'm not sure, John, if you have anything on that.
On the HR position?
Right.
No, last I knew, Bill and I were going to sit down and meet with the only candidate who
Okay.
applied, although upon reviewing the candidate's resume, it looks like they have quite a vast experience in human resource management in a manager's position. Perhaps maybe a retiree who's just looking for something to do. So I think it is worth our time to sit down with the individual. But I have not heard anything from Bill, so we really should ask him.
Okay, that's basically where he left it with me also.
Well,
Moving on.
there's been no discussion on bumping that position up.
Bill
Not
had
a-
mentioned it, but we really haven't discussed changing it to a full-time. No.
Okay.
That discussion would come about during our budget discussions, which will be more in the springtime. So what has been budgeted for this year is a part-time position. And so if that is the case, then I think, we'd have to put that in. That's usually around February or March if we wanted to move that into a full-time position.
All right, I just know that we talked about it here, the possibility, so whatever the process is, it is.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, moving on. Surveys. Remember that the deadline is August 31st, so we can start looking them over September 1st. I know I gave some more to Michiko and she was going to send them off to Chris. I'm not sure if Chris is going to come on tonight or not, but has anybody else handed in or know of any other surveys that are out there?
I know
I'm still,
that I had a whole bunch of people that I did some with online. I had my iPad with me and they went through and filled them out online with the link. So I didn't have to turn in any paper, which was good for me.
Great. Did someone say something about Chris coming on?
Yeah, well, I'm still collecting them at the food pantry here that we run. So that's every Saturday. So I'll get some more this weekend as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna check. Friday is our next day for our food pantry and see how that's going. So we can round it up and then we can start looking at those and evaluating, what people think. Just looking through them, I found that a lot of the folks were sort of in between those 3 and 4s, not too many absolutely terrible or too many absolutely wonderful. So that was interesting. And I think I only had one that made a comment. Most of them, they just fill them out and give them back to you. Okay, so we have that. Next, I just wanted to give you a heads up. I have been talking with Tiffany about getting our social media changes on the agenda for the Common Council. So we can show them what changes we've made and let them know that Jack, our city attorney, has already looked them over along with our labor attorney. And hopefully she's hoping that sometime either the 1st or 3rd Tuesday in September, they'll be on. And then at some point it'll have to be publicized for the public for so many days before we can vote on it. So I just wanted to let you know that we are moving that process for the changes for the social media forward. Okay. And then tonight, what I thought we could do, as I said earlier, I just want to check again because John and Charlene came on. Did everybody receive the 2 documents that Michiko sent us? The harassment and workplace violence.
You're muted,
Don't know.
John.
Yeah,
Yes,
John,
yes,
Okay.
yes, I received them.
okay. Did everybody have a chance to read them over?
I
I
did not.
perused them.
I read over, they're very wordy, but there are particular spots that, for instance, you know, the folks that we want to include, like, for instance, on the discrimination and harassment policy, we might as well start with that one. Under policy, as we did with social media, I think we just have to tweak that paragraph of who is included in there. It's basically discrimination based on race, color, sex, religion, age, disability, marital status, military status, national origin. And I think, as we did with the last one, we added gender. Was there anything else that we added that I'm forgetting in that portion?
Not that I can recall.
Okay, so going through it, if you guys have it in front of you, is there anything, and like I said, it's, you know, it's kind of wordy, it's like any policy, it's repeated quite often. But for instance, the first page, if you want to look down through, if there's anything that jumps out at you that you think we should change, I think it's just your basic, you know, discrimination, harassment policy. And I know Chris had shared one with us to look at. And I'm sure we could look at some other ones and get some copies or a template from NICOM. But what I thought we could do is just kind of start on the first page, since not everyone's had the opportunity to read through this one. So any suggestions so far? I'll give you a minute to read a little.
Man, these are long policies. I just have a general question, maybe not a policy question, but just a general question.
Sure.
Where we're holding the department heads and the supervisors responsible for maintaining these safe work environments, what training are they given to? And maybe you guys don't even know, I don't know. What training are they given to ensure that they know what a safe, healthy work environment is?
Good question.
I mean, we're holding them to it and we're saying that they can discipline in this paragraph and they should discipline.
Right.
I just would hope that we're setting them up for success in doing that as well.
Mhm.
Well, as part of implementation of this policy, there should be training anyway, but my suggestion is since Kathy Hochul's getting ready to do a shakedown, just go with whatever the state's putting out there because she's already said that no more of this electronic training. She wants you talking to people face to face, and I just love it. But
Yeah, you
just
can't
go
click
with
through
that.
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
she said you ain't clicking through a training no more.
Every year we do the trainings where you watch the slides and then you answer the questions. So I don't know if it's something, do they do something similar to that?
I think they do. I don't think they bring anybody in to train anyone. I know in
Because
the
it
past,
costs money, so
right.
like the school doesn't.
And there's certain areas of, like, for instance, I know like our fire chief, you know, he goes to different seminars. It's just as like, say with the mayor, the clerk, the city attorney, different people, they go to NICOM to get training, you know, basically on the finances, the legal aspects of running the city. But I'm not sure, you know, I don't know. I don't want to say something and then have to backtrack. I'm not sure exactly how much training our department heads actually get on implementing any type of our policies, other than the framework that they have to work within that's on paper. You know, if it's a policy that's been accepted, say by the union or by the city, those are the parameters, but that's not really training in working with people and educating people. There's a big difference between going down, you know, a checklist and, as Dan just pointed out, doing it on a computer versus actually sitting with someone and talking to them and what they find acceptable and not acceptable in the workplace. John, how do they do it at Pitt? Do you do in-person training for different policies?
No, but I think that's changing. I agree. So I appreciate Dan bringing that point up. I think that they're doing more of, even if it's Zoom, it's still in person and it's still live.
Right.
Rachel just had to do for Salamanca, I want to say sexual harassment or some form of training, and it was a couple hours long, and you had to have your camera on. You had to interact, and so I think that is an area I know as city employee, all of us have to sit through those. You know, I don't know if there's 3 basic, you know, PowerPoints you got to click through, and then take a simple quiz at the end. No one's learning anything from that, and you don't.
Nope.
You're just checking off a box. So that is an area that we definitely could improve our internal, you know, policies or in our procedures with. As I'm reading this, something that came to my mind that I questioned, I don't even know who the harassment committee is. Like, I don't even know who the discrimination harassment committee is. It says that's the person, you know, that's who you should go to with an incident. I don't know. Do you, Linda? Does anyone know who can?
Nope.
Who are?
I know.
So I think that one of the things that I've come to realize since we started looking at these different policies from the city is we have multiple things that are in place to check the box to say that we have them. So at the end of the day, it handles liability, but they're not viewed as important because honestly, various department heads don't know that they're available. Various city officials don't know who's in what position that the policy cites. And I think that's, number one, there's a level of irresponsibility there. You know, if we're really going to do what's best for the city and for the city employees and the citizens here in Olean. So that's one thing that I guess is disheartening to me as we read these. And, you know, talking about the training, if it's not viewed as important from the top down, it's not going to be viewed as important from the department heads or the employees themselves. So I think that's one key thing that as we continue to read through these and redo these different policies, that we really have to make sure that the message isn't just a check in the box message, because then it's pointless.
Right.
And
No,
I
I
guess
agree.
that's where like a full-time HR person might help out to
Yeah.
do all those things.
Mhm.
So like, I
Agreed.
know with the schools, we have like the DASA, and you can get on each school has their website, so it would go to the principal, like for like a bullying type thing, but then we have our HR person, so I mean, I guess we would have to find out who the actual committee is, or who the person goes to if there is ever an issue.
Mhm.
Is it the mayor? Is it the department head? Is it?
I mean, my understanding, the way it works now is it's pretty much the mayor, and
Right.
that's pretty much it. I mean, that doesn't sound like a committee to me.
No, and I think, I know there's a safety committee, and the city clerk is the person that oversees that committee. But you're right.
It says
Whenever there's
here,
a-
it says here, the
complaint.
committee shall consist of 3 members to be appointed by the mayor for a 4-year term.
So Linda, when you were mayor, what was the protocol? Like when you were mayor, what, if this situation ever happened, like,
Mhm.
what was the protocol?
Well,
Was
I
it
know
a
the
committee
public,
or?
no, basically, I don't, other than this, the safety committee, it was the department heads, and they would come to me. And then we would include our city attorney. Like we had, for instance, I remember someone complained about someone bullying them. And it was basically myself, the department head, and our city attorney that sat and discussed it, that walked through there. If you look through to the back of your information, there's a couple sheets that you fill out if you have a complaint. So we would have that individual fill it out and then walk us through what happened, so we were aware of it. And then from that point, it went back to the city attorney to review it. And then the city attorney sat down with the person making the complaint, along with the department head, unless they didn't feel that they wanted the department head with them at that point. But there was only 1 or 2 instances that came up with me. Most of the things that we saw were grievances from the union folks. You know, they didn't get called out when they should have, and things like that. But as far as sexual harassment or discrimination, I really didn't see much of that at all. But I do remember that one time it was a bullying thing. But those were the 3 people in the room: myself,
So,
the department head, and our city attorney.
so I think we should go back to the mayor based on the
Mhm.
policy and just ask him, who is the committee and who are his 3 appointments?
Okay.
The other
Because-
thing about that, and I'll tell Bill this, because since he is the final decision maker, he's got no business in the room until the
Right.
very end. He's got no business with his hand in that cookie jar.
Nope.
And
And
you
the
know,
other-
part of it,
Exactly.
The other
And
comment
part
I
of it
want to
is-
make
go ahead.
is this withdrawal of discrimination or harassment complaint. What kind of foolishness is that? Because if somebody files a complaint and then they want to withdraw it, that tells me that there's a disciplinary or some kind of issue going on there, because you don't file these kind of complaints against people and then go, oh, sorry, didn't mean it.
Exactly.
That I've never seen that in my whole career.
Mhm.
But is this already a city policy? Is this already in place?
What's that same card?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is what's in
Sure.
place right now.
So
Interesting.
I'm with Charlene too. Like, if the mayor is the final decision maker, I know when I have to make decisions and I'm the final decision maker at work, I'm not allowed to be involved until the end, until everything is wrapped up with a little bow and they're ready for a final, this is what we're gonna do. I'm not privy to that whole investigation. I'm not privy to sitting in the room when they're talking to people. I'm not privy to all that information, because that taints your decision.
Mhm.
So I'm with her too. If the mayor wants to be the final decision maker, and that's however the city decides to pull this off, then we're gonna have to take off this committee piece to this and just put the mayor will make the final decision, or however that's worded,
Mhm.
with a caveat that he shouldn't be involved, you know, he can't be involved in the investigation, blah, 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 to make it
A fair
yeah.
hearing.
The-
And I think
the other-
having
the
an
other-
HR person would certainly help with this situation too.
The other question I have is, we talk about the investigation piece up here, but I don't think we ever narrowed down in the policy who's actually in charge of doing the investigation.
Okay.
And if it's the department head, is that truly an independent investigation?
Mhm.
I guess
Probably
that would be the
HR
question.
person.
So
Yeah,
I'm reading about the disciplinary. I'm reading about the if somebody's found guilty of doing some of these things based on an investigation, or, you know, the disciplinary process, possibly discharge, you know, blah, blah, goes on and on and on. And that's right before the committee, but who's actually doing the investigation? Is that a charge of the 3-person committee? Is that a charge of the department head? Is that a charge of, who's that a charge of?
mhm.
And is it independent?
Nope, I totally get what you're saying. These are good questions to ask, Mayor.
So I think what's happening, and Bill can correct me. I'm looking at the charter. I think what they're referring to is the sexual harassment committee. They talk about a 3-person committee is also what is in the charter, and it's called the ethics committee or ethics board, which consists of 3 members. And I don't remember who Bill has. I know he has names on that. I don't remember off the top of my head who he has appointed. But the Board of Ethics powers and duty is to have the powers and duties of to render advisory opinions to the officers and employees of the city with respect to any code of ethics under the rules within this code. So it goes into the standards of conduct, and it's under, just for your reference, our code of ethics, section 2-116. And so it does go into 2-123, sexual harassment, and it talks about the sexual harassment committee. So, I mean, even that, it just is focusing on
The ethics.
the ethics side of it. So
This specifically says discrimination/harassment committee.
right.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
if we need to change that to the ethics committee, then you have to change that. But this specifically lays out that it says members of the discrimination/harassment committee,
Mhm.
which
Yep.
to me says that that's a completely separate and distinct committee from the ethics committee.
Yeah, right now, the ethics committee is Paula Snyder, Jim Griffin, and Jack Hart just has to step, he is stepping off because he's now the city attorney, so he'll be replacing him.
So we just need to figure out which committee they're talking about in this policy and clear that up.
Okay. Let's see, committee members. Yeah, and I think, you know, as we go through here, I think we're gonna see more and more the need for an HR person is is very great. Just to kind of oversee this. The mayor shouldn't be overseeing this.
You
You know, it
you're-
should be a separate committee, and an HR person could, you know,
You're-
could form that.
So
your
I
HR
kind of have,
person, your HR person should be doing the investigation.
Right.
another concern that I have is you know, if a complaint's filed, the department head sends a signed complaint form into the committee. If, you know, I mean, that process to me is another roadblock to actually being open, fair, and addressing it. Like, that's half the problem with the way things are done currently. You know, you can't really address it because, well, who I have to address it to is the one I have the problem with. you know,
Mhm.
so you can't, you know, it just doesn't, to me, it doesn't create a safe environment that we're charged with, a safe and productive environment for the employees of the city. So I definitely think that piece needs to be reevaluated.
I would even go as far as making the statement and recommendation saying a supervisor should not have to sign a complaint. Complaint should be able to complaint should be able to be sent directly to a specific person who in normal circumstances would be HR, for any employee who would review and investigate that specific complaint. Because once you start having supervisor signatures on it, then again, it taints your complaint.
Yeah, yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I just wanted to throw this out there, not that it matters much now. I mean, we all know we're trying to get ourselves an HR officer, but who would be perfect to handle these types of issues. But I think right now, we do have to have a sexual harassment or a harassment officer. And I think it's Fred Sheridan, our city, I'm pretty sure it's our city auditor, who, you know, is an accountant, that falls under his job description currently. So not only from a organizational perspective, but also from this policy, there's a lot of ways we can improve this.
Then Fred should be the person that receives the complaints without supervisor signature.
Right.
And he should also be the one that oversees the investigation as a neutral party. If he's really truly the officer that you put in charge of that, unless
Right.
it comes from his department, then he would have to default to somebody else.
And even that, Danny, should be stated.
Yeah.
There should be somebody else who is stated as an alternative to conduct an investigation.
An alternative, because you know Fred's not going to be there forever, so you get another sexual harassment officer. He may come out of DPW, so
right.
If DPW, it's just an alternative that they have to recuse themselves, if I could speak correctly, if the complaint comes from their department.
Right.
And the person never should be named by a supervisor or anybody else. Like, technically, your supervisor shouldn't even know that you filed a complaint at all. It's really none of their business until the investigation is over, unless safeguards need to be put in place immediately.
Okay.
I don't know. I defer. Charlene, am I crazy on that?
Oh, no, I agree with you because, well, and I'm being a sarcastic little twit here. Well, but that's why you need that form at the end that says you withdraw.
Yeah.
So when your supervisors, so they can have you withdraw before it gets down to the HR office.
Yeah.
When we have one.
When you have one, yeah.
Yeah,
And,
it's needed, I'll tell you.
I don't want to, I don't mean to be, I don't want to be the one sitting here picking this thing apart word for word and line for line. Believe me, I don't. But there's the investigation part is really crucial for me because that's not spelled out in here. And without that, you can't, there's no need to go any further with the policy.
Mhm.
You don't need to look at it any further. You're done at that point. The policy is negotiable.
Yeah.
Well, and I
And
still
that's-
recommend that we try to use whatever the state has in place, take information from there, because this policy it's just so Olean. And the thing about it is this just feels like control. You know,
Mhm.
like you're only going to say as much as I allow you. But if you have something in place that the state has mandated using their language, then it might have a 50-50 chance of being a fair policy.
Mhm.
There's a
Yeah,
statement that
because
some
it
supervisors.
definitely isn't. I mean, even there's a portion, I'm trying to find it. I just lost it. I was looking at it. But it said something to the effect of, if a department head came to a resolution, like why is the department head handling the complaint? It just, like you said, Charlene, very much so a grip on this. Let me, manipulate the narrative and control the situation as opposed to addressing it appropriately. And I think a lot of our policies, actually, when you read through them, are kind of dictated like that, honestly.
Mhm.
Oh,
So-
that's true. That's our job to fix it. But it's
so I
true,
will-
if you read through this, it's really geared towards city oversight and city control of where the complaint goes, who sees it and what happens. And then to throw one more thing on the table is there's the whole union negotiated aspect of it. You know, you can have a complaint, but if that person disagrees and they bring in their union rep and points the finger and says, you know, you're discriminating against me, you have a whole new ball of wax going on.
Mhm.
And that's the downside, to
Well,
me.
worse than the union rep pointing the finger saying that you have a problem.
Mhm.
If you did something or lack of did something based on this policy as it currently exists, you might have a lawyer problem.
Right. Right.
I
Once
don't know.
the
I
complaint-
don't like the whole king of the castle feel of how the policy's written.
So
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think fixing this or updating it is long overdue. And I think it's good to put it on the table and just kind of pull it apart and just really focus in on some of the things that are, one, very outdated. And if you look at it from a certain perspective, is very discriminatory in itself.
mhm.
You know, it sets you up to not get far.
The verbal and nonverbal harassment piece, I think that we should go back and take a look at our social media policy for some words in there for the verbal and nonverbal piece. I think we came up with some good verbiage and some good wording when we went through that.
Right.
Charlene, I'm gonna call it a learning experience about the time frames that it takes to get something from point A to point B. When we came up with that learning experience, I think if we could use some of the verbiage that came out of there in here, it might take less of a learning experience to get a change.
So I understand that there's a new city attorney.
Jack Hart.
So he's new. I mean, what's he been in?
Yeah.
Okay. How old is he? I'm discriminating.
No, he actually is semi-retired.
Isn't he only
is-
part-time?
He's part-time, but he also several years ago, he was a city attorney. So it's not his first time doing the job. But yeah, he's our city attorney at present because Nick DeSerbo went on to become the city judge.
But definitely the as far as timeline of getting this stuff established and put in place, part-time status definitely hinders that timeline.
Mhm. But you know
But
what?
I think my experience with Jack is that he may be a little bit more responsive than you.
Yeah, and I think even with the social media aspect where we had Jack look at it and Joe Bracchio look at it, it's just a matter of saying, we need you to look at this. And, you know, they did it. Yes, it took a while, but we finally got it done. But I think if we go through and just kind of point out I mean, there's lots of things that kind of jump off the page that are just very outdated.
Yeah,
And-
we're on page like 1.5 right now.
Well, like if you look through section 2, right, you look at B and C. So B is referencing if the department comes to a resolution, they write a letter saying, hey, it's been taken care of. You know, a statement saying it's been taken care of. But then C says if it's not revolved, then it will be turned over to the discrimination and harassment committee. So definitely, if there's a discrimination harassment committee, the ethics, whoever's handling it, that's where the complaint needs to go. HR and them. It doesn't need to bounce through 18 people before somebody takes it seriously.
Right, and it shouldn't. It should be directed towards, and again, that's the need for an HR person. That person is the person, as we stated, that should be doing the investigation, look into it, look who the people are involved, and do their job. And I agree, I don't think it should be bounced back between the department head or the mayor or the city attorney, like 3 or 4 different people. Myself, if I had a complaint, I would feel like you're just trying to run the clock out and make me chase my tail, and I'll just give up.
Well, not only
And-
that, it puts the person's
That's pretty
dignity.
simple.
Yeah.
Not only that, but it puts the person's dignity in question too. Because you're making you think about somebody who makes a sexual harassment case, put yourself in their shoes for a minute. A lot of times they don't want this. They don't want this complaint to overshadow the work that they're doing. And
Right.
the more hands that it bounces through, the more people that have to touch it, and the more people that have to look at and read it, you're putting their dignity at risk. And that's not fair to them as a person. They've already been through an experience, and now you're going to send them through another experience.
True.
I would like to make a suggestion, or maybe it's a thought, just a thought, I don't know. So if essentially the HR rep was the go-to and the point of contact, I personally feel, especially how long we leave some positions vacant or struggle to fill some positions, there needs to be a contingency. Because if we don't have a contingency, if it's the HR rep that oversees, et cetera, and that role isn't there, then things automatically default to the mayor. And,
Yep.
and I just don't think that's necessarily the best approach on topics like this, to protect the city and deal with aspects of liability and ensure that the safety and respect is dealt to the person filing the complaint.
Well, with all due respect, that's how we got in the situation that we're in. It's because we had these positions and they were eliminated, and then the mayor decided that it was okay for the mayor's role just to take on these additional responsibilities, and now we all sit here because it ain't right.
Mhm.
So that's how the city got themselves in a situation that we currently find ourselves in.
Mhm. Nope. And I just think we have to start at the beginning, and it would be nice if in a perfect world, we'd already have an HR person, even if it's a new
Mhm.
person, and that person could be sitting here with us looking at these policies, because if it's an HR person with experience, they could look at these policies and just off the top of their head say, okay, 1, 2, and 3 have to go, or they have to be changed. And it's like, we're trying to do something that an HR person should be doing.
So
Right.
if I'm curious, how long has the posting essentially been closed for the HR rep at this point? It's been a few weeks, has it not?
Yeah, at
Okay,
least
so
a few weeks.
It's been a few weeks. We only have one candidate. So my question then becomes, how important is this to the city? Because we can schedule ribbon cuttings, but we can't schedule an interview with one potential candidate for a role that is paramount to the city and the progression of the city. There's a problem there. And I don't have a problem telling anybody this, but there is an extreme issue with the fact that we're putting in the work we're putting in to do things that are to protect the people of Olean, the employees of Olean, the city of Olean, and it's not important from the top down. That's a huge problem. And it shows, in my opinion, the importance that this committee holds from the top down. And that's frustrating. That's extremely frustrating. In my opinion, there's no reason, at least the interview couldn't have already happened.
Exactly.
too-
And case in point, that's exactly this situation, filling that job, interviewing one person is case in point. That's why we got here.
It's
And
not
then-
like we have 10 candidates vying for the position. We have one who, just from looking at a piece of paper, we were told looks highly qualified for the position. What's the problem? The problem is the level of priority and the importance. It isn't viewed as important.
And
But
the
yet-
other thing too is that, like, by not interviewing and putting people off, people have a disinterest and don't want to be,
Exactly.
like, especially even with young kids. Like, why? A good example is our son. He worked at Cutco. they said, oh yeah, we're gonna hire. He was kind of holding out because they kept saying, no, we want you, don't leave, don't move yet. And then he up and moved because he can't wait for them to decide, you know, when they're gonna like hire him or, and I feel like we're doing the same thing with the city. And as a taxpayer, like, and as a person on this committee, when we busted our butts to do all of this work to try to get all this stuff in, it's like it just goes and it sits.
I feel
And-
like, I feel like we're viewed as a threat. It very much so is a king of the castle complex. And there's no real progression taking place because of how the system is already currently set up. And we're not making it a priority. We're not trying to make progress as a city. That's
And
frustrating.
it's just, we're getting it done because we had to have this committee and that's what we're gonna do. So we're doing these things, but there's no follow through. And it's
Exactly.
kind of frustrating to me because, I mean, I'm not getting paid to do this. Nobody else on here is getting paid to do this, and it's our time. And yes, I did volunteer for this, but I volunteered for it to make a difference and a change for the city of Olean. And it's just frustrating. We do all this work and then where's the change? Like, and then the question is do we want change or are we just doing this because we need this committee? And we're saying the city of Olean has a diversity committee.
Right.
I mean, I have the same struggles with the school, so it's not like, and I'll tell anybody that. I mean, it's being recorded. I don't care. It is like, don't just do it to pacify me. Do it because you want that same change that I'm sitting here screaming and squeaking about for the people of the city of Olean.
Right.
Can I just, I know you want to look at the beginning of that document, Linda, but I want to go to, I want to look at the forms that you're asking somebody to fill out.
Okay, they're back.
The complaint and
back up.
discrimination of harassment, right?
Right. I got it.
I take issues with some of these forms, and I think this leads into this conversation that we're having. So put yourself, as you're filling this form out, in the position of somebody who may have to fill one of these out, right?
But, and let's also remember, it's outdated too. Are these
Yeah.
the correct forms that should be used right now?
Right.
Too?
Amen.
It's the ones they're using.
But that
But
needs,
is
they
it
need to
even
go.
legal? But
So-
are these forms even legal today?
Well,
Well, and
right.
they're outdated because nobody's ever actually used them because they stop it before it ever gets to.
That
So-
point.
when you're reading through these forms, you guys are using words like complaint as if you're just a complaint. Name of the complaint, not person who had a complaint, person who was sexually harassed, person, whatever. You're using the word complaint. It sounds like you're on trial already. Just the verbiage in the forms itself is, are you still employed? Where was the other
People
one?
shouldn't be made to feel like
Actions.
they're an enemy because they're filing a complaint.
The actions you
Right.
seek. You're asking the person that's filling the form out what actions they seek out of their own harassment. So if I say to you, the action I seek is I want Gary fired because he sexually harassed me, and Gary doesn't get fired, but they find him guilty of sexually harassing me, but he doesn't get fired, what's that say to me? You asked me what I wanted done. Why would you even ask that question? Why
But
would I
Daniel-
have?
Daniel, there have been times that I've done investigations and I'll ask the person what they would like to see as the outcome, because that helps me gauge where this person is at. Because I might think that, Bill called Sally a B and, she'd like him to be fired, but in reality, there's more to it than that. So it gives an idea of how it really affected that person, because they might not really realize the extent of it, or, you know, it might be more damaging to them than an investigator can even assess at that point. So if you can figure out what they're thinking, it gives you an idea how deep the wound is.
Well, wouldn't that come through conversation?
Well, I'm
I
gonna
just
have a
find that
conversation,
odd.
but I'm still gonna document it.
Yeah, I just find that odd that this isn't you, Doc. This is the person filling this out. Like, they're not even being asked a question. They're instantly being said, what's the action you seek?
Well, first of
Yeah.
all, as an HR person, I would not give somebody a form to fill out. I would have
Yeah,
a
I've never,
thing in
Right.
place where you could contact me and we can sit down and have a conversation. I
It's-
would not do it this way, but
Oh, I agree completely.
And I would even go as far as to, I mean, this is just my opinion, but to meet with that person away from the workplace.
right,
I think the last thing you need is the people, and you know how people talk, especially in the city building. If they see Bob Smith walk into the HR's office and he's in there for a half hour or so, they know he's complaining or there's a problem. So I think you have to make it more private than that. And that would be my opinion, is to meet with this person off the premises, whether they
And-
work at the sewer plant, the DPW garage, or the city building.
and then
I think we
who's to
scratched the form.
say, who's to say that if, so say I was in this situation, I would refuse to fill this piece of paper out, because who's to say this information isn't gonna be shared? Let's
Exactly.
face it.
Exactly.
gonna
Yeah,
be
I say
shared.
scratch the form. I don't think,
Based on,
Right.
I don't
based
think there
on the
should be a
policy,
form.
based
Yeah.
on the policy structure itself, it's gonna be shared amongst the department head. It's gonna be shared
Right.
amongst the mayor. This is the form that we're talking about moving around. And that's why I wanted to go right to the form, because as you read the policy, this is what we're talking about. This is
Right.
the form that we're talking about moving from point A to point B to point C, and eventually ending up on somebody's desk, the financial auditor's desk, who's supposed to be taking care of it after 5 other people looked at it. Now,
Right.
Charlene had a great point. If I was conducting this interview with somebody in the form named the complainant, that would be appropriate. Who's the complainant, right? And they ask what they seek. I would ask them that question, I'd write it down. But to just hand somebody the form, this form almost makes it look like you're a complaint.
Yeah, I was-
What are you seeking? What are you doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Right.
I was gonna
What do you
ask,
want?
I was gonna ask Charlene, when, if you were sitting down and somebody's, essentially filing the complaint, they're submitting a complaint. My thought process is that even though it would be a conversation and you're not handing them a form, there's a pretty standardized approach to obtaining the basic information before any type of investigation. So in my mind, there's no need to have a form to hand to an employee to file a complaint.
Mhm.
no. I mean,
That's true.
the-
And my other question would be, does a copy of this complaint become part of your permanent record?
Oh, well,
No,
I mean,
no,
it
no.
shouldn't, but
A whole separate file. She has no place
Yeah.
near somebody's personnel file.
Just a question, because there's, like I said, there's so many things that are outdated that people have just passed on because, well, that's the way we do it. That's the mentality in the city building. Even when we bring in new employees, they get indoctrinated into that thinking. And it's very
yeah.
hard to
And
break
that's
that.
a problem. That's a huge
That's
problem.
a huge problem.
See,
Huge
in
problem.
in the part about filing and what happens to the complaint, I don't even see it referenced in here, and maybe I overlooked it, but I don't even see it referenced in here as to the process of
I don't
what
think
happens
it
to the-
was.
what happens to the complaint, where is it filed?
Right.
They-
No, I don't think
even-
I don't think it is. I
So,
just
yeah,
think
you're-
it needs a
You're
whole,
right, I could just drop
overhaul.
that in your personnel file and act like I didn't know it was there. So the next time you go for a promotion and the department head opens up your personnel file, because they have access to it, because we don't have HR,
Mhm.
they can see that in it.
Yeah, this person's a troublemaker because they complained.
so
No, I
do-
totally see the frustration.
So in regards to personnel files, since we don't have an HR person, where are those? And do the city workers, do they have the opportunity to look at their personnel file? Because I do, that's something we're encouraged to do as teachers, so we know what's in there and Like how does that work for the city without an HR person? Or is that,
I think that
Beach
the
coach.
personnel's office are basically in the individual departments. And I do know that you are allowed to look at them as an employee, because I had an employee ask me, because he felt he was being treated unfairly. And he wanted to look at his file to see if something that had happened in the past, I don't know if it was a complaint or something, if that was in there. So they do have, I think that's even a legal right that they can look at that file. I know at the
yeah.
hospitals you
yeah,
can.
because I mean,
It's your file.
right.
Yeah.
But I just didn't know, but so they're probably with their department that they're with, like the department head has them, or,
We don't have like you said, we don't have a centralized HR person. Terry Bella has like insurance. She oversees the insurance claims and who is getting family plan, single plan. I think those are the files she's in charge
and
of.
that's all HR. That's,
Yep.
I mean, that's how
my
it works.
problem. That has been my problem for 10 years with the city. They take the HR and they've done this for years. They've just divvied it up amongst the department heads. Like LU Tech was the safety department.
That's why we're in the
person.
process.
This
Well,
person-
and I don't
Right.
want to
Well,
be
I'm gonna call a spade a spade. That's Bill Aleo trying to control
Oh,
the
Lord, Jeremy.
Oh, it's been going
That's
on long
exactly what
before
it is.
Bill.
It's the
He's
king of the
just
castle.
continuing
Tom.
well,
it.
but he perpetuates that because all of this stuff, I'm just appalled at the
Mhm.
level of control between the mayor and the supervisors. It must be
Yep.
very stressful to work there.
I think it is. And I
But
think
yes.
some people just get used to knowing where they can push the buttons and where they can't. And some people, it's like they just go to work and go home.
That should,
And
there probably aren't
shouldn't be
even
that
any,
way.
y'all probably don't even have any complaints though, do you? There probably aren't even any active complaints.
everybody's scared as hell to complain. Who they
Yeah.
complaining to?
Yep. But you don't know who's gonna hear it.
That's
Well, you don't
very
even know
true.
It
You
is.
don't even know who's going to handle it.
Mhm.
So
So, yeah,
John referenced the accounting guy who's our sexual harassment guy, right?
Fred,
Fred. I'm gonna leave Fred alone. Well, no, I'm not. But would it make sense to have Fred come on here and try to explain to us
How
what
he
part of
handles it?
this, what part of this policy he does and what he does with any type of sexual harassment claim he may have?
has he had any training to do it?
I think you gotta I think we gotta understand what his responsibility is before we can even ask him if he has any training.
Mhm.
I mean, does he even know that he's the sexual harassment guy?
I
And does he
wouldn't,
know does he even know what to do if somebody came to him and
No,
said that they've been
not-
sexually harassed? I don't,
I wouldn't recommend, because all he would be a target. If he says anything, he's gonna be a target. And he probably doesn't have the authority and the power anyway. He probably just, gets.
his title is nowhere in his policy.
So, yeah, I agree with Charlene. We probably shouldn't have him come on. I feel like we need to ask
Yeah.
the mayor the questions.
Yeah.
Who's on the committee that this policy states? There's the committee. What the role is of each person. Where the personnel files are, when we're gonna hire a full-time human resource person, so they can be in charge of all of that stuff and have it in one location. Like,
And I'd
It's
also
just-
like to know who's doing the investigation
yeah,
and is it truly independent? Because that's important, really important. for it to be
so, and if we could find out the last time this policy was updated and where this form came from.
Yeah,
Like,
there
actually-
weren't any dates on it, was there?
No,
didn't see
and
it.
that was my
No.
next question. Typically when, at least I know at the school, when a policy is updated, it's
Yeah.
dated at the bottom
Yeah,
so that
Yeah.
you know you have the current version.
Yeah, the hospital's like that too. When
Yeah,
we
it just,
update things,
it feels
I
I
like
mean,
a
most
very,
businesses,
yeah, it
Yeah.
feels like a very much so check in the box. Let's hop on Word real quick and type something up because we have to have something. And
So-
that's what it looks like. That's what it feels like.
the
So-
workplace violence one, if you look on it, the form, the last time it was updated was December of 2006.
and you know, the
But
sad
that's not on
thing,
the other one, so.
right? The sad thing is, it's almost, it's hard because, and I don't know how to put this delicately, but it's almost like they count on the council changing, so nobody ever brings up anything, nobody ever wants to update policies, nobody, you know, they're just there for their Tuesday night. They tweak things when they have to. These things, to me, these are kind of like the cornerstone of your employer, of your employment. You,
remember-
if I were being hired, I would want to know that these policies are in place. And if people that come to the city and look at these policies, I would think twice about working there. And I just think it's partly the changeover, you know, and that's how things just get left in a file. And so I think it's good that we're kind of dusting them off and asking the questions.
I think that I recall, and I could be wrong, but I recall on a few occasions where Bill had made the statement that the mayor is responsible for protecting the city. That's one of his main responsibilities. So regardless of if the council changes every 3 weeks, the
Mhm.
last 8 years, this should have been, I mean, like Michelle said, you know, what was it, 2006?
Yeah,
You
Yeah.
said, you know, so, you know, at this point, again, it goes back to what we talked about, the control of everything, the control of the flow, the control of the process, the control of the outcome. You know, I mean, clearly the priority is cutting a ribbon and not doing what's right to protect the city. And that's a problem.
so do new hires get an employee handbook? So we just got ours. We can view it online, but it's updated. So do
Mhm.
they get an employee handbook?
Yep.
And
And
it's
I
all
don't
this
know-
all these old policies.
What I will do is I'll ask Terry for a handbook and just kind of look through it and see if all of these are in there or just kind of snippets or something, because it's not a very big book. So let me get that from Terry.
Can you ask, I guess, the mayor, 2 questions before we meet again? One, does a sexual harassment policy even meet New York state law?
Well, we
And
take,
if it doesn't, where is it lacking that it needs to be fixed? Because I'm reading that and I'm not quite sure that it actually meets the intent of the New
do you
York
know
state.
how they get around that, Dan? Is we all have to go online onto New York State sexual harassment. We have to take 45 minutes, read through, take a test at the end and sign our name and our information that we did it.
Actually, New York
That's how
State
they get
policy
around it.
says it's got to be 60 minutes.
But you
Well-
can't run a business with a policy, nor can you run a city with a policy that doesn't meet New York
That's
state
not up
standards.
to date.
Yeah.
It's
I'll-
gotta
I'll
meet
ask
New
them.
York state standards. So.
I'll
And then
ask.
the other one is the other policy before we even start to look at it, is what the discrimination, the other one. Does that one even meet the letter of the law? Because I looked at that one too, and there's a lot of questions in that.
Mhm.
You
The
have-
workplace violence one, that's
Yeah.
the one that said it was revised in December of 2006.
But you have a lot of questions before we even get to that one. There's a lot of questions in there about much of the same thing that we're talking about now, the framework, the language, who does what, how's it, is it truly independent? You have the police chief and the police force investigating the workplace violence stuff. There's a lot of things going on there that would lead you to believe that it's not independent and it's not you know what I mean? So
Right.
like,
Right.
does that one even meet New York state standards, right? Because if they don't meet the standards, then we at least have to bring them up to minimum standards as we're
Right.
making changes.
Well, this is what I have so far
And
to
please
ask
get
you.
it, please tell Bill to get a new form. He can Google one and find one better than that.
No, we don't need a form.
No
We
form.
don't want a
Or
form.
no form, or
No
get
form.
rid of the form
No
or
form.
something, because that form is like.
I
it's
wouldn't even
almost-
fill it
it's
out, because
almost
I wouldn't trust that not everybody's gonna know
Well,
my business,
Just the
so.
way,
Yeah.
just the way it's laid out, it's insulting.
It is.
Right.
If I
insulting.
had to fill that out, I would be
I would say no,
insulted.
I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
yeah.
I wouldn't fill it out. Okay,
So-
here's the questions that I'm going to ask the mayor. Who is on this 3-person committee? Let's see, where are the personnel files actually located? Are they in the individual departments? Are they in Terry Belle's office? Where are they? Where do things stand with the interview with the HR person? Who's doing the investigations? And when was the last time that this particular, the discrimination and harassment policy updated? I'll get a copy of Terry's handbook. Also, our sexual harassment and harassment policies updated to where New York State says they have to be. There should be some type of either language or some kind of page or something that says we are following New York State policy, and it should be dated. It should be all of those things. I mean, anyone can put a policy together, and if there's no date on it, then there's no end date. It's like, it can be there forever. And that's sort of what we have.
This is just a Charlene thing. These documents are pitiful. They're embarrassing. We don't even have like our logo on there. They don't look professional. They look
Right.
like somebody literally pulled them out of their archive somewhere. So we need to, because if there's no pride, there's no pride. And we as a community deserve to have professional, presentation and leadership and, but
we
you
should
know,
value our employees better. This is
Definitely.
a reflection on how we treat our employees.
100%. 100%.
I mean, it
There
is,
should be-
everything that I was at the hospital, both hospitals for almost 40 years. Everything I signed, every policy was dated, everything had the hospital's logo and who was on the committee. Everything was at the top, so you knew what you were reading, who you could go to if you didn't agree with it. And
There should
this-
be a standard City of Olean policy and procedure template with the headers for reviews and footers for dates of reviews. It should have
Yep.
the logos on it. It should have
100%.
the current mayor's signature on it, the last time it was signed, date it was signed, date it was reviewed, any revisions, date of any revisions. All that stuff should be up there in that header. In that, and so that when you're looking at a policy, you know that this policy was originally developed 7 years ago. It was revised 3 years ago. It was, completely revised again 2 years ago. So you can have a running tab of all that stuff. And it just should be a standard template that you should be able, you can still do your stuff in a Word document. You just have to copy and paste it on a template.
Yeah,
And make adjustments to the headers and footers.
I agree. Okay, guys, well, our storm is here and it's after 7:30. So how about, I'll ask these questions. I'll get a hold of the handbook. And then we will meet again in 2 weeks.
Sounds good.
Sound good?
And
then
you don't
we'll
want to get
send
beat
out-
up, you gotta show up.
That's right.
Hmm.
I've gotten beat up a lot. So I will send out any documents I can via Michiko, and I'll get these questions. Hopefully between now and then, the mayor and John can sit down and interview this person, because it's great we're talking about it, but if we don't do it, we don't have an
talk-
HR person. Get
We-
moving.
We talk about a lot of stuff. Is
I
there
know.
any ways that you can put all them questions in like a Word document form and then have the mayor answer all the questions underneath that in that email as his answers?
Let me talk with John, because he's good at that.
Because I don't want to sit through an hour explanation. You can
Right.
just write them down.
I agree.
I don't put
Okay,
that stuff
guys.
in writing.
All right.
Charlene, that was my thing. I was
You're not gonna put that in writing? After he
I was
listens
trying
to this tape,
I was just trying to ease that one in there.
That's
Holler me out like that.
Okay, guys, I think Michiko has to turn us off, so I'm assuming she's gonna be back at the, Michiko, are you there?
She
there,
is
Right
there.
there.
Yeah, she's
Right
there.
there in the corner of the screen. Look.
I'm on my iPhone, so I don't see her. Michiko, we're done, so you can just disconnect us, I guess.
Y'all have a good night.
Bye.
Good night,
Bye.
guys.
everybody.